I'll tell you right up. Got it. Okay, but I'll tell you right up front, there's really nothing new about what we're going to talk about, but we're going to talk about how expectations of students have changed. And I think that's what's really new here. Okay, so Amanda, you want to start?
Amanda Van Lannen, Social Sciences. I teach history.
And of course, Marlo. Everybody knows Marlo.
Hi, sorry, I'm the one with the camera. I was trying to get this looking more normal.
Okay, Marcy.
I'm Marcy Helpin. I'm in the Humanities Division. I teach communication classes, and I'm also the advisor for the Speech and Debate Club.
Emily.
Hi everyone, my name is Emily Jervis. I actually work in our international programs office, but I'm in charge of our English Bridge program, and I teach a couple student development courses.
Emily, please send me an email. I would like to connect with you. Heidi.
I'm Heidi McMillan, teach Justice Studies from the Coeur d'Alene Outreach Center.
Thank you. Sue.
I'm Sue Hasbrook. I work in the Business and Computer Science Division and teach accounting and finance.
Jennifer.
I'm Jennifer Alexander. I'm a professor in the Teacher Education Division as well.
Thank you. And Royal.
Hi, I'm Royal Toy, and I'm also in the team division.
Thank you to my colleagues for being here today. I appreciate it. And we'll just kind of go to the next slide here. Make this work. There. Okay, so this presentation is going to provide an overview of the new norms of course development, specifically for online elementary education program, which I'm the coordinator for that program. Talking about the online student population, who are they, and the best practices for non-traditional students. And one of the things that I think is really important to recognize is because of COVID, we don't have traditional students anymore. They don't even exist because students come with such a different set of expectations now. Like, for example, I had a student email me say, I'm not going to be able to be in class. Are you going to Zoom it? No, we did that. It was not fun. So, so I think that that's a big part of this is that students have changed, their expectations have changed, and we need to respond likewise with how we develop our courses. So that's what we're doing today. So to start us off, I kind of wanted to tell you a little bit about the online education program. It went fully online starting in fall of 2020, in the middle of COVID, which was serendipitous because, we're doing online education anyway. We started with 16 students at 6 different sites and 3 different states. So that it was jump right in, hit the ground running. 2 years later, we now have 49 students, and I'm still the one person, so it's been really interesting. And as of right now, we have 9 distance site students, and right now they're all in Idaho, but we've had them in Washington, Oregon, Montana. So I have to do one in the spring in Nevada, so that'll be new. So it's growing and changing, and my hope is that as we look at these online classes, and I think it's very true for our face-to-face classes as well, that we are responding to the student needs and making sure that they're successful in these programs. Okay, so what are the new norms? And they're really not new, but looking at high quality instruction, how do we make sure that we are accomplishing that? Looking at relevant discussions and interactions. That's critical. That's what creates our community. That's what gives them a sense of belonging to the class. And then timely instructor feedback. That's one of their biggest complaints, is that they don't receive their grades or feedback for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And so that's one thing that I really strive to provide them timely feedback and quality feedback that really helps them improve what they're doing. And a lot of times I say, you know, is this a writing class? No, but you need to be able to write well and know the difference between formal language and informal language, because as a teacher, we need to model that formal language all the time. And so if they're not using it now, they're not going to be in the habit of using it when they're in front of their classrooms. So really trying to work on that. All right. So what's high quality instruction? What does that include? Universal design for learning, instructional supports, and updated materials. That last one's been a big part of what I have done since I got here, because I inherited courses and a lot of the course materials were really not updated. And so it really is important to go back and make sure. I'm really surprised at LCSC because they do not require that you use the latest edition of books. All the other institutions I've been at, you can't even order an outdated edition. You have to get the latest edition. I understand that that's to save on costs, but at the same time, if we want students to use current information, we should be using current information. So the updated materials, I think, is very important. The instructional supports, not only that we provide in our own teaching, but making sure students know what's available here on campus, because we do have the writing center, we do have math tutoring, we do have, well, maybe, oh, Joan's a new name there. But Emily, I bet she has resources through international programs for students that she accesses for her students. So those instructional supports. And then universal design for learning, what that's really about is knowing your student population and knowing the backgrounds of your students, knowing their cultures, their languages, their traditions, all of those kinds of things, so that we can incorporate that into the instruction and make it more relevant and make it more, oh, thank you. I didn't want it to start updating while away. Yes. So knowing who your students are, so you can incorporate that into your instruction and make your instruction more relevant to them. Because we know we have students in our classes that sit there and think, why am I learning this? What is the purpose? You know, this is just a waste of my time. And at our level, it's also a waste of money. So, you know, you have to have that consideration. So relevant discussions and interactions. Now, I know this is too small for you to see. It's not the intent for you to read it. It's that I want you to see that I actually get students to write more than one sentence. They're actually engaging in these discussions. And what I found is if I have the content and through the discussion, if I help make it relevant to them so that they're responding from their perspective, it's not about pulling an answer out of the book or pulling an answer out of their notes. It's about them thinking about the content and responding from their perspective. And it's been really dynamic where students actually, you know, they're required to respond to 2 people, but a lot of times they'll respond to 3, 4, 5. And that to me is telling me that these discussions are meaningful. So that's one of the things that I've done is really try to have it come from their perspective, because when I first started teaching online, what I found is you never wanted to put something in the discussion that came right from the textbook, because all they did is copy and paste. That's all they did. So that's not meaningful. That's not interactive. And so changing the questions from their perspective seems to have really been effective. So then I also have some more examples. And this one I wanted to point out because it was a lot of fun. I had them pose 5 what if questions. And so I have, what if we couldn't move? That's pretty interesting. What if pencils didn't have erasers? What if paper did not exist? What if we had no light except sunlight? And what if we had no electricity? So they were pretty creative, and I just out of what I received. And then the other part of the question is, what is the difference between knowing and doing? So really getting them to think creatively and respond in creative ways, I think also contributes to creating their community. So, and they really do piggyback off of each other and their responses. I had a response today that said, I'm so glad you said this in your response. I didn't even think of this. Now I'm going to think about this. So that's exactly what I want to hear from students. So, and then also I had them post their projects and read each other's projects. And so these were some of the responses I got from that I thought were really good. Great job on your final project. I thought it was excellent. I really enjoyed your title for your lesson. And I really think that it would be 100% successful. I liked your informal assessment. I love that. And how you tied it to the rest of your lesson plan. I think you did a really good job overall. So really meaty content, not just, oh, great, but really you could tell they actually went through the project and they looked at the different pieces and they really benefited from sharing and having that, again, that community of what's going on with their classes. Because these students are from all over. And like I said, right now I even have one in Nevada. So this one, I also like to have them give me feedback on the class itself. And so this is just some feedback on the class. I feel like the best part for me was being able to post on these discussion boards. Love that. Because the prompts we had to post were things that will help us out in our future classroom. A lot of times I'll say, and how are you going to use this information in your classroom? What are you going to do with it? And able to see that everyone thought about the different strategies and methods and how other people would use it in their classroom or in the future was really cool. I feel like I learned a lot from these discussions. There was so much good information to keep in the back of my mind for my future classroom. And I'm really excited that I have that information. So I loved it. It was very affirming for me. So again, just because I hear a lot of faculty members saying, I hate doing discussions because the students just say the same thing and it's no big deal. Well, I think that's a missed opportunity. I think that if we really design it in a way that's interactive, we will get that outcome. So, timely instructor feedback. It's something I really work hard at and try really hard. So this is some of my course evaluation feedback. Feedback was quick and constructive. I really appreciated the extensive amount of material that was provided for each module. Watching the videos and reading the articles was so much more engaging than just the text. Again, that's that updated materials, providing it along with the text. There were several videos and sites that I've bookmarked for future use. I enjoyed this course. Teresa is a great instructor and she provides positive feedback and helps answer any questions I have. I felt the course was very useful in gaining knowledge on classroom management and classroom instructional strategies. I enjoyed the class. And then the final one, Teresa gives constructive feedback in a timely manner. So again, that's just affirming that it really is important to students. Students want feedback and they need it in a timely way. Otherwise it's not effective. So
what is your time frame?
24 hours. I don't always make it, but that's my goal. Just like, I taught at noon, went back to my office. I've already graded one class online today. I'm halfway through another one, but I try to go through every single one every day. And right now I have 5 online courses and 2 face-to-face courses. So it's a heavy load, but I really try hard to keep up on it. And if I need to, I use weekends. But I also, the way I balance it is I rarely get here before noon. My mornings are my time with my mom. We go for a walk, and so that's my balance is I just, I'm not around in the mornings. And so that's my time. And I'm the same with email. I really try to get back within 24 hours. Okay, our student population, who are they? First generation, Gen Z, the Gen Z, I think you were there. And yeah, that was a great presentation. Really enjoyed that. The English language learners. This is really important because we don't have many of them, but we do have them. And even if there's just one, we need to meet their needs too. And I think that that's one thing that not all of us know, those strategies for English language learners. And it's so important. I'm just still saddened by the fact that I was hired on for English as a new language program, but that same year it was cut because of low numbers. So we don't have that program, and it's really unfortunate because those strategies are so important. Even if you don't have high numbers, every single student within that classroom, the teacher needs to be able to provide them access to the curriculum. And if you don't know those strategies for English language learners, they're not getting that access. It's not happening. And that's on us. My opinion is it's on us. In terms of our program, we have several paraprofessionals. They're working full-time in the classrooms already as teacher aides. And so they know a lot about classrooms and how classrooms run, but they also find out through the coursework that they didn't really know what teachers do. And they realize that, wow, I'm not prepared yet to teach. I need to do these courses and I need to do my internships because, wow, I'm not ready, because there's so much more that goes on that they don't really see in terms of planning and universal design for learning, all of those things. They just see the outcome. They don't see the prep work that goes into getting ready for all of that. And then we have returning students. We have students that started college maybe, but then decided to work, or they just went straight to work. And now they're deciding that they want to do something different and they've come back to school. Those students, they have very different expectations for what happens in classrooms. They are very serious about their education. They want their money's worth. They really want to learn the content. It's very different from our Gen Z and our first generation students, because depending upon who's paying for the tuition and what's going on, they may not be as serious about their education. So just knowing that these students all come from, this is your diversity right there, so the diversity can look in so many different ways in terms of your student population and being able to address their needs. So what are the best practices for these students? How do we engage them? First, we have to build on their background knowledge. And all of them are going to have different background knowledge. So we need to find out, what is it? What do they know? And then explicitly teaching vocabulary. This is one that's specific to English language learners. They need that vocabulary. And even first generation students sometimes do not have that formal academic vocabulary that they need to be successful in their courses. So being very explicit about teaching that vocabulary and connecting the informal words that relate to that formal vocabulary, because that's what helps tie it back to their prior knowledge. Because if we present a new word to them and they don't know how to connect it to what they know, they're not going to remember it. They're not going to be able to use it or apply it. Encouraging class participation and peer interaction. It doesn't matter if you have a face-to-face class or an online class. That participation and peer interaction is really important. And I think discussions are one way to get at that. So providing specific feedback, making sure that you actually tell them, and you know, one of the things I tell them a lot is, for example, mixing singular and plural words within a single sentence is not a good idea. We don't want to do that. But I have to specifically show them that they are doing it, because they don't even realize they're doing it until I point it out. And then they can start fixing that on their own. That's one of the things that I also am kind of stringent about or strict about, is if I've already provided them feedback at least once, maybe twice about the same thing, I start taking off points. And because I want them to integrate that feedback. And I even have it on almost, I think it is on every assignment where I have the instructions. I say, please be sure to incorporate the feedback on future assignments. And that's an expectation that I have. And then facilitate and utilize teacher to teacher connections. That's us. That's right now. This is our way to improve what we do. And I just love that we have this avenue to be able to do that, because it really helps us serve students better. So now it's time to hear from you. What do you consider the new norms for course development, and how do you see this information impacting what you do? So, hi, Sarah. Anyone online would like to share? What do you see as the new norms, and how do you see student expectations? Do you think that they've changed?
I'll share something, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
I appreciate your comment that they want timely feedback. In one of my online classes, this last module, I asked them if there was anything I could do to help them be more successful. And the most consistent piece I got back was to give timely feedback. I personally found that kind of frustrating, because out of 2-week-long modules where stuff is due at the end of the 2 weeks, they're turning it in Saturday, and first thing Monday morning, I'm giving them feedback. And I don't take weekends to do work. That's how I draw my professional boundaries. And so I was frustrated, going, how much faster do you want it? And so I'm kind of wondering if anyone else is running into that issue, or am I out of line, or are they expecting the moon? There seems to be some kind of miscommunication. I don't know. I just throw that out there.
So you're doing it on the next business day, right?
That's what I thought. It's a lot, because I've got over 30 students in this class, and there's 2 major assignments due every 2 weeks. And so sometimes it takes me 2 or 3 days to get through all of them, but I can only do so much in a day. And I just was frustrated, because I'm like, I can't physically do it any faster.
I actually have a statement in my syllabus about like email response time and turnaround time. So we have that discussion right up front, so that they know, like, I'm going to try to get it back to you in this time frame, but I'm human. So.
Yes. Yes. Anyone else as far as feedback? And Royal.
Yeah, so Jennifer, just kind of to address that, one of the things that may also be helpful is to change the due date to like a Tuesday. And so that way it's due during the weeks, or a Monday, so it's done, they've had the whole weekend, and then the expectation to grade is not until, you know, Monday or Tuesday after it gets turned in. So that way it's not, oh, you're not grading it over the weekend, why aren't you working?
I'll consider that. Yeah, thank you.
I know for me, all of my due dates for my online classes are on Thursdays. And the reason why is because their final assignment for the course is due on a Thursday. And I find that if I don't make all the due dates on Thursday, I don't get that final on Thursday. I get it over the weekend. And then that reduces my grading time for final grades. So that's what I've done. And I don't know if that's helped or not. I usually try to get the grading done on Friday, but if I don't get it done on Friday, it's usually done on Saturday. So again, the turnaround time is a business day, which I think is very reasonable.
Cool.
They can see you a little better.
Any other comments about due dates and timely feedback?
I'll just second both of those, and my due dates are also on Thursday, Teresa. And I try and actually align that with the submission deadlines in my live class when it concurs that semester, when they're on a Tuesday, Thursday basis. So I teach 2 sections of the same course, one live, one online, and then I run them exactly the same in terms of those kind of requirements. I was just going to say, I think another expectation of students, online students now, given the pandemic and things that we've gone through, is there's a much higher desire for digital content, I think, at least in my classes, and I teach a largely quantitative class. So it is homework heavy, and it's solving finance problems and accounting problems. And so, for example, I make extensive use of integration in both my live and online courses. And I have come to rely on my publisher's learning management system quite a bit to provide digital content that's readily available when they're studying at 10:30 at night and I'm gone to bed and I'm not there to answer their homework question. They can click on a video that shows them how to proceed, or models through how to proceed on the homework problem that they're working on, just using a different data set. So things like that, once you kind of get savvy to it and realize, oh my gosh, this could make my life easier, and you start to draw on it, it does, I think it also makes the students feel like they have a resource they can go to without bothering the professor. You know, for some reason they don't like to do that, I think, many of them. And it puts them a little bit more at ease that they've got some material that they can refer to right there within our course shell.
Nice. Yes. Yeah, I agree about the digital material, that they want that. And I think that's where I kind of look at updating those materials and making sure there's supplementary content. And that's kind of how I design my classes. Is I have a content area that supplements the text and does provide usually video clips of different things that are being referred to in the text. And so that's kind of my approach at providing those updated materials. I do have a different approach, though, in terms of my online and my face-to-face class. I'm doing 2 of those right now, where one section's online and one section's face-to-face. And I have different due dates for the face-to-face, just because if I stagger those due dates, it's easier for me to get all the grading done. Also, the other thing that's a little bit different is each class period that I do face-to-face starts with a starter activity that's a discussion post. And so I have twice as many discussion posts in my face-to-face class as I do my online class, because of my online class, it's just a 1-week module, so it's one discussion. So I do split them up that way, but the content is all exactly the same. So, but thank you for sharing. That was very interesting. Anyone else?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I'm not teaching online right now, just in person. And I found since the pandemic, students are just so hungry for community that I spend a lot of time community building, and maybe not even, content focused, just doing that work. Do you find it hard to do in the online environment, or?
I don't. I really don't. I think that part of it is because I've been doing it so long. And I do feel like I've gotten to a point to where I've figured out some of these things so that I can create community and I can get interactive discussions. But also just even emailing students. The other thing that's come out for me, an outcome of the pandemic, is more Zoom meetings with students. And students really do seem to like that platform. And I didn't use that at all before the pandemic for student meetings. So I'm using that a whole lot more now. That seems to really be effective. And it's really helping. When we first started the online program, the intent was for me to travel to each site one time during the semester. But we've really come to the conclusion that that's not cost effective. It's really not even necessary, because if students have a question, we can just jump on Zoom right then and have a face-to-face conversation about what's going on, how's it going, whatever. And we do have students in very challenging situations. This prior to the start of this semester, we were contacted by multiple school districts trying to hire our teachers or hire our students as teachers, and they're not even finished because the teacher shortage is that extreme at this point. And so some of them have been hired and they're doing their coursework and a brand new classroom. Yeah, it's overwhelming. So they are
for them.
It's overwhelming for them. And we require a journal, and in their journals, they're saying, we're overwhelmed. Yes, you know, understandably. So how can I help? What can I do? And I have students that Zoom with me on a regular basis because they want that contact, and it just helps them de-stress a little bit about everything that's going on and all of their requirements. So
there's a comment from Sue in the chat, which I know it's not projecting up there, but I can see it. It says, I agree that meeting with students in Zoom is one of the good things that came out of the pandemic. I now regularly meet with my online students for tutoring or to review their exams together. And that was not occurring prior to COVID.
yeah, I agree. You know, some good things did come out of it. What else?
One of the things that came up in my SD 107 section this week is that the students were frustrated that in their face-to-face classes, the professors don't post recordings of the lectures. And that's an expectation that I had not run into before
Wow.
this semester.
Yes, I'm really bad about that. I don't record my lectures. Multiple reasons. One, I hate watching them and I hate listening to myself. That's number one. But number two is that expectation from LCSC that whatever we post be closed captioned and scripted and fully accessible, which of course I understand, but it makes me resistant to creating the videos.
Well, quite frankly, we don't all teach in spaces where it's possible to do that easily. I asked them though, I'm like, honestly, how many of you are going to go back and listen to that lecture?
Good question.
What did they say?
Quite a few of them were like, yeah, you're right. We probably wouldn't. I'm like, you're in class. You should maybe try listening the first time. So we were talking about note taking and stuff, but yeah, when I pressed them on it, they were like, yeah, we probably won't take the time to go back and look at it, but they still wanted it. So.
Yeah, I'm catching, I mean, I'm calling out, well, I kind of called out students because I was actually talking about listening today in class. And so I took the opportunities to call out the students that were scrolling through their phones and not actually listening. But they're not listening to lecture in class, and they're certainly not taking notes. And I feel like a lot of them don't think that they have to take notes anymore. And the thing that, and maybe this is something that they've gotten used to, but, and I at one point I kind of took it out of my syllabus during the pandemic, but I've noticed more and more students try and snap pictures of the PowerPoints with their phone instead of actually taking notes. And that irritates me to no end. So, but I think they're losing the skill of note taking.
I will also add, going off of that, I think I agree with the recording of lectures. It's kind of a difficult topic because you want them to be engaged and you don't want to have to repeat kind of what you're doing. But it might be beneficial for English language learners. I know we have some new students this semester that are a bit overwhelmed with the language, just because it's a lot to adjust to, especially the first couple weeks. So we've talked to them more like if they do it personally, if they can talk to the professor and do an audio recording or something, just so that they can listen back, because often the speed is an issue. The professor talks quite quickly and it's hard for them to keep up. But I also, in my SD 107 classes, and I teach an international student seminar as well. And I found over the last few weeks, they were really engaged in the beginning. And then as the weeks have gone on, they're on their computers a lot and on their phones, which I know is kind of the newer generations. But even when they have their peers are presenting, I've given, reminders and warnings like, hey, if someone's presenting, make sure that you're giving your attention to the speaker. And I still run into that issue. So I don't know if that's really a solution, but I do think the recording could be beneficial for English language learners.
And I certainly would not hesitate at all at allowing a student to record me. That would be fine. My hesitation is making sure that recordings are fully accessible and getting all the scripting done. Royal.
Yeah, just as a response to Marcy, with that, one of the challenges is that in most school systems, students aren't actually taught any good pattern or way to take notes. And so they're used to just recording, direct speech, right? Direct language, direct note taking, or they're taking notes off a board where it's all written out for them anyway. And so if you can provide an advanced organizer, or you provide teacher notes ahead of time, or you go through the process of actually teaching them how you want them to take notes in your course, then I think you'll find they'll be more effective in that process if it's necessary for the content in which you teach.
Good point. Yes, I know that in classes that I have taught note taking, the response is, I've never been taught this. And so giving them a format, whether it's an outline or a Venn diagram or whatever it is, having them actually use it with the content, because what I'm doing is I'm talking about how they need to use this as teachers with their students, but simultaneously I'm teaching it to them, and I want them to use it so that then they can model it for their students. And I usually get the feedback of, no one ever taught me how to take notes. So I think it is valuable to explicitly teach some note taking. I also tell my students that as they become teachers, their students should always be taking notes. They should have a notebook out all the time, whether it's a vocabulary journal or a journal that goes along with the subject. We need students to be taking notes a lot more, because that's part of the kinesthetic engagement with the content. Because when you write something down, you can visually see it in your mind, even when it's not in front of you. And that helps memory, it helps comprehension, all of those things. So that's one of the things that I really push for my students to use when they teach, is note taking. What else? Do you teach differently now than you did prior to COVID?
I would say I do in my online class. And what we just talked about, having regular Zoom tutoring sessions. I'm new enough back to teaching, though, that for me, the first 2 or 3 years back was really about getting my bearings. And what had changed a lot from when I taught 1 year, 20 years ago, was the technology. And once you understand the powerful tools that are available to you and start to master those things, then it really increases your confidence as an instructor. But for me, once I realized we've overcome the time-space continuum with Zoom and Canvas, I don't need to worry about students in Coeur d'Alene not getting the same thing that students on campus do, because I can just have them reach out to me and I can spend as much time as they need individually or collectively, so that they can't say, I'm not getting what I need from this course. And I really feel like that's it's, for me, it's been a good thing, I guess. We were all forced out of our comfort zone a little bit, probably some of us more than others. And for me, pushing that little bit further was enough to overcome the typical complaints that I was getting in my online class. So.
Good to hear.
One of the biggest changes in my teaching since the pandemic is we just were forced to become so flexible and so compassionate in our teaching. And I thought I was flexible and compassionate before, but then, this was like a whole new set of norms. And I realized there are some things that I'm totally fine with letting go. Like I was strict on certain things that don't actually matter to me that much anymore. And I think my focus has become so much more on student learning and student engagement than some, rules that perhaps were not serving anyone as well as I thought they were.
So some self-assessment and reflection on priorities.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah, I thought I was flexible and compassionate. Yeah, and it's just
Whole nother level.
Well, and the students, they are so much more anxious, and that's an impediment to learning. So
It is. I talk about that all the time, about how that sense of belonging is critical if we want students to learn. If they don't feel like they belong where they're at, they're not engaged, not at the same level, not at a level that really allows them to learn. So today's lecture was really fun, because after I got done repeating myself, I went into some new content, and we talked about that whole idea of leveling the playing field. And I used the analogy, and maybe some of you have seen it, of the fence. And, you got to adjust, the size of the crates or whatever it is that you're going to allow people to stand on so they can see over the fence. But now the idea is just take the fence down. So what we talked about is how we have these subgroups of students: English language learners, students with disabilities, students that are culturally and linguistically diverse. And the whole point was, we can't just accommodate one specific group. We've got to accommodate all the groups. And when we accommodate all the groups, that's when the fence comes down. So it was, it's so fun to see them, respond to that kind of content. So any other thoughts about leveling the playing field and providing access for students? Do you feel that our online courses do provide more access for our students?
I think it provides greater access, certainly geographically speaking, right?
Yeah.
Students that before couldn't have come to campus for classes are now able to get those classes. However, I'm not sure that everybody is as well equipped to engage in online learning as other students might be. And I to that extent, I don't know if we're still sort of excluding a certain group, but I think there is going to be expectation that we get more, not rigorous, but have more common or standardized definitions of what is a quality online course moving forward as we deploy this method of instruction increasingly more and more. Even at the state board level, things like Online Idaho, at some point, somebody at a higher level up is going to come in and look at how we're rendering those courses to see if there's certain minimum standards of rigor or whatever met there. And So I think it's probably more accessible. I just don't know if our students are all equally equipped to meet those different, or that new expectation that is really inherent in online learning. And if it's an asynchronous course, it typically requires them to be pretty self-directed learners.
Yes, and I think that's an excellent point for the online elementary education program, because we have specifically targeted paraprofessionals for this program, and the paraprofessionals do not have the background information that students typically do coming into college. And so that's a population that they're at a higher rate of English language learners within that population. They don't have the same level of education, which means they don't have the same level of vocabulary, and it just kind of goes from there. So again, it's us finding ways to make sure that our content provides scaffolding for those students as well, because they are not going to be successful if we don't scaffold the instruction for them, because they just don't have the same background, knowledge, and experiences.
I always think that right now, like Sue was saying, if you differentiate between the synchronous and asynchronous, because online versus online together are totally different situations. And so maybe like how you're talking, if they don't have the background, then it is online synchronous.
Well, that's a good point. However, our particular program is totally asynchronous. So that becomes challenging for us to make sure that that scaffolding is embedded in an asynchronous format.
Well, as far as accessibility, like you were talking, in our program, we've been very fortunate that we can send our students to Salt Lake and Boise and still have them in class every week because of online. But there are disadvantages to that still if they are all sitting in their own houses. So I actually have the students, they are all in one room in Boise Valley, so they do still have personal contact with their classmates, and then they're online. So that works, keeps it strong a little.
It certainly is much easier to build community face-to-face than it is online. It just is. That's the reality. So when face-to-face is an option, even if, Lorinda, like you're saying, if they're face-to-face there and still online connecting with the rest, that's still a higher level of interaction than asynchronous. It just is. Any other comments about the difference between synchronous and asynchronous?
So in your asynchronous one, are you using more video? Like,
yes.
And that's how it's working, making community?
Well, the community is built more through the discussions and what's happening online in the course. But in terms of our observations that we do of their teaching, all of that is through video. Yeah. And we have them upload their video to a platform called Go React. And that's a really nice platform because it allows us to make comments that are actually time-stamped with the video, so they can see in real time how that comment relates to what they're doing in the video. And we require them to, at a minimum, video 2 lessons that we watch and evaluate.
Do you include videos that teach them how to use the program that they need to?
Yes.
Because I think people are putting more time into
Yeah.
that, and it is time consuming, but
It
it
is.
seems like it might be a bang for your buck thing where it saves you time in the long run.
Yes. Royal, why don't you talk a little bit about Go React and what you've done to help students know how to use it?
So this particular platform is a video, I guess, Dropbox, so to speak, where candidates will video themselves or somebody else will video them, and they'll put their video of their teaching in there. And it's a fairly robust tool where you can actually go back and provide comments as you're watching the video, just like you would type them in. You can also provide video and audio comments to the candidates in the video itself. You can upload documents for the assignment. You can actually create a video as well as provide assignment directions at the very front. So candidates, when they're coming into the assignment, can see you talking about it. You know, if you had a presentation, you could do that as part of it as well. So within the tool itself, they're set up as classes, and we use it as kind of one combined class for all of the candidates, because it's to really put in some similar assignments. But by partnering with some of these tools where you pay a small fee compared to what you get, the company themselves actually have a lot of the tutorials already built, and they're built for multiple platforms as well as multiple majors. So GoReact is used quite extensively in any oral communication field where you'd give feedback. It's used extensively in nursing where you'd be observing practice. It's used in education, other things. And this isn't about selling that particular product, but I think I've spent a lot of time also creating videos and creating accessible opportunities for students. And then also because I know the platform so well, if with our instructions with the candidates themselves or the students, they don't get it, they can always just send the video to me, or they can provide me access to do those things, and I can get it uploaded for them and, you know, do all of the minor things that would take them time in a very short period of time because of our access and the upload speeds at LCSC.
And I know Jennifer just today uploaded, or maybe yesterday, I don't know, I got the message today, uploaded a video for one of her students. So that is something that we regularly do for students if they have any kind of glitches, because we don't want them to have glitches in uploading video. That's not where we want them spending their time. So we really do try to troubleshoot for them as much as possible. And Royal, you know, if I can't figure out what's wrong, Royal is always very responsive and really helps us use that tool. He's kind of the one that has led us in that direction. So, anything else? Did I not talk about something you expected me to talk about? I guess not.
You did.
Well, thank you all for participating. I really appreciate it. If you do have any questions, please let me know. Emily, I really would like to connect with you because I think that we do need, as a campus community, we need to kind of share out some of those instructional strategies to help our international students. So I'd love to connect. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Teresa.
Bye.
Thank you.